Good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with CBS 42 Now. Hope you're all having a great day so far. We heard earlier today that the University of Texas and Oklahoma University have officially asked to be a part of the SEC beginning in 2025. And so to discuss more about this, we now bring in our very own Chris Brees, who is in the CBS 42 studio, to sort of give us some insight, answer a few questions we've got regarding this. Chris, how are you doing today?
It looks like the Big 12, as of right now, has already appealed to the SEC and applied, and now they need 11 votes to get that bid into the SEC. Originally, they said Texas A&M allegedly was going to be the only one who voted no, but now they're going to say it's going to be a 14-0 sweep. We have no idea when they're going to vote or who's going to vote how, but it is absolutely a game changer, not only in college football, but in college athletics in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you mentioned that it could be a 14-0 sweep in favor of bringing in Oklahoma and Texas. What does this actually mean for the SEC, specifically Alabama and Auburn? Now they have two more powerhouses in the conference. How will the divisions line up? Do you see it being a split, one going to the east, one going to the west?
Well, to put it bluntly, how does it affect them? It gives them more money, and I think that's the reason why these conferences, and I say these conferences because we have no idea what other conferences are going to do, are doing this kind of thing. We don't know how badly schools got hit by the pandemic and how much money they lost. I think Texas and Oklahoma looked at this as saying, what's going to help us financially in the future? How are we going to be sustainable in the future? The Big 12 maybe could be fine for us, but we know the SEC will. And we talked with Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports last week at Media Days. He was all over this for the entire week. He's estimating that $60 million per year is going to be the number that every school will be getting from TV contracts alone. So for Alabama and Auburn, it means more money. They're already bringing in a lot. They want to bring in even more. It's going to secure the SEC, if this happens, for a long time financially, because not only do you have a couple of big TV markets with all of the different stations and cities in the state of Texas, but you've got two huge brands that are going to bring in so many fans and so much revenue that the SEC, that you got to think that they're going to approve this unanimously, 14-0, and the reason is going to be the money.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that money with the two teams coming in, but what about on the flip side, the Big 12 now losing two of their arguably best teams? What does this mean for the Big 12? Does this, could this be the end of the Big 12? A lot of people are starting to say that that conference is dying after we saw a couple of years ago with Texas A&M and Mizzou both leaving to come to the SEC as well.
Yeah, I would say it would be irresponsible to speculate what would happen to the Big 12, because you got to think that they're going to want to continue to be competitive, no matter if you're talking about basketball or football or whatever it is. They have to go out and try to find new schools. You're called the Big 12, and you're actually ironically down to 10, and now it's going to be down to 8. You got to think that they are already poaching, and there's reports about this already this week about finding other schools who want to join the Big 12. We get caught up in college football a lot, rightfully so. It's the #1 revenue maker by far, and it has by far the most fans in college sports. There's other sports out there where the Big 12 is going to be plenty competitive, and even in football they can be competitive too. So I wouldn't say that the Big 12 is going to fold. There's no way that they're going to look at themselves as a conference who absolutely needed Texas and Oklahoma to survive. They're their two biggest moneymakers by far, and they're their biggest draw. So they got to be demoralized that they're leaving. But I think at the same time, business will continue to go on for the Big 12. They're going to find who they can to fit in there. Will it change their football landscape? Yeah, it absolutely will. But I don't think it'll change their competitive edge or competitive factors and how they want to compete in every single sport out there and trying to make money too, because at the end of the day, it's all business, right?
No, absolutely. And you mentioned that, with the Big 12 down to less than, 12 teams, of course. Do you see any possibility that the SEC might let go of some teams? I mean, if this does happen, it would welcome 16 teams total to the SEC. You don't see any teams leaving the SEC?
No, not just for the fact that you haven't heard that anywhere. I just think it feels like the more the merrier in this kind of situation. And I don't know if we're heading to mega conferences. Some people don't like that. I think it would be kind of cool in some aspects, having a couple of mega conferences, and then you got your other non-automatic qualifiers, I call them in college football. They're not going to get rid of Missouri. They're not going to get rid of Vanderbilt or any school that you want to look at that may be the so-called weak link of the SEC. I think the way that the SEC is looking at it is, so what if we had 12? Okay, now we have 14. Now let's go to 16. I don't think they're going to try to monopolize the entire college football world and have a 75-team conference. If they do that, we're already in a different topic of conversation about what the college landscape looks like in all sports. So they're not going to get rid of teams. I just think, again, for them it's the more the merrier, because, again, they're going to be bringing in more money with more teams.
Yeah, well, with that same aspect of the more the merrier, Jay Billis with ESPN said that the ACC should contact the SEC about possibly joining the two conferences. As you said, we don't expect to see any 75-team conferences, but how close are we to just abandoning the idea of conferences altogether and possibly just everybody plays teams all across the country? And, what does that shape, how does that affect the college football playoff, especially with the possibility of a 12-team playoff where, conference champions are automatically eligible to join?
That seems like something that would be so far down the line to be a reality. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, because it could one day, but I think looking at it right now in 2021, we're looking at one step, okay? The next step is 16 teams in the SEC. What are the other big conferences going to do to combat that? If they do, they don't have to do anything. There's nothing that says they have to. Maybe the Big Ten feels like they're plenty competitive right now, and the Pac-12 says the exact same thing. If we're going to be talking about joining two major conferences and making, say, a 30-team conference, that I feel like would be ahead of its time. Now, if we're talking 10 years from now and this thing's a massive success, we don't know when they're going to join. 2025 is the alleged date right now. If it's earlier, who knows? But if this is going to be a big success, I absolutely would not throw off the table a huge mega conference, kind of like the entire southeastern central part of the entire country being one huge conference. I just think we're a long way away from that, and a lot of these scenarios right now still need to play out because we have no idea how that's going to work,
Right. Yeah. No, obviously, we're all just trying to take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
Do have one last question for you, Chris, kind of a fun one. This completely take out regional names and everything. What are just, your top three teams you would like to see join the SEC, whether it be sort of history between some of the other teams that are already in the SEC or possibly just some amazing matchups you'd like to see?
If we were living in a pseudo world, I don't know of any Alabama fan, at least, who would not love to see an Ohio State or a Clemson. You had mentioned the ACC with that Jay Billis comment. Clemson, obviously, just because of the natural rivalry with the college football playoff in the last 6 years. And then Ohio State solely for the fact that Urban Meyer was at Florida and then he was at Ohio State. He beat him at Ohio State, and then they came back and beat them in the national championship last year. And Ohio State's all saying, well, we were injured, we had COVID, yada, yada, yada. I feel like Alabama fans would absolutely love to have Ohio State as a game they play every year. But if it gets to that, if they're playing an Ohio State or a Clemson, and then you throw in Texas and Oklahoma, two huge college football names, we're looking at a schedule here, Phil, that is just daunting. I mean, you could make your own little national championship out of all these schools that we're talking about, because those seem to be the ones who are competing for it every year. And if they're going to be in your conference, I mean, you might as well just have your own conference national championship, so to speak. So I would love to see those two. You can throw in a Notre Dame. You can throw in historically a USC or a Michigan. But there's those rumors out there about Ohio State and Michigan getting talks from the SEC. Who knows how true that is? But I think, yeah, I'd say Ohio State and Clemson would be the two names that would really be eye-poppers in college football as of right now. But we're sitting here talking about this in this year. We don't know what it's going to be like in 2030. We have no idea if Alabama's going to be any good in 2030. I know it sounds like blasphemy to say right now, but is Nick Saban going to be around forever? No. How is Alabama going to be in 10 years? We have no clue. How is Ohio State going to be? We have no clue. But, yeah, it's all interesting times. And I think as of right now, that specific aspect of the entire college landscape with the realignment, it's fun. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to speculate and see who could play who. We're going to get down the road and see if it actually works. Is it financially feasible? Is everybody else getting a fair shot? Those are the questions we don't know right now. We don't have the answers to. But one day, when this does all come to fruition, we're going to find out if this is actually going to work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we do know one thing, that in the coming days, coming weeks possibly, we will hear any confirmation that Oklahoma and Texas will be joining the SEC,
Yep.
and we might even see Steve Sarkisian joining back in the SEC to take on Nick Saban in possible matchups starting in 2025. Chris, I want to thank you for joining us today. Yes, absolutely. I want to thank you for joining us today on CBS 42 Now, and we will see you soon on the CBS 42 News at 4.
All right, man, we'll see you.
And thank you all joining us for another edition of CBS 42 Now. Hopefully you enjoyed that segment with Chris and I. You can watch a recap of it over on CBS42.com momentarily, and you can find all the information regarding this possible merger and conference realignment there as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.